So you think you're ready to dive into existentialism, huh?
You came to the right place.
We're going deep today, going all the way back to the Søren Kierkegaard, the original existentialist. But,
The OG existential.
yeah. Don't worry, though. We're not going to get all lost in the weeds of, like, abstract philosophy.
No.
We're going to break down Kierkegaard's ideas in a way that makes sense, like, in your life today. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because Kierkegaard wasn't just some philosopher shut up in his office. Thinking about these things, he lived through them. He was a rebel.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so...
Especially for 19th century Denmark.
Especially for 19th century Denmark. Okay, so we're talking about a time and a place when things were very traditional, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
very traditional, and here comes Kierkegaard, just shaking things up a little bit.
Totally. I mean, think about it. He was born into a wealthy, very religious family in Copenhagen.
Right.
You think he would just,
follow the well-worn path.
follow the rules, behave himself.
No.
That wasn't Kierkegaard.
No. Sounds like he had a mind of his own. So what happened? What was the turning point?
Well, I think his father's influence was really big on him. His father was a very intense personality, and he had this really complicated relationship with, like, faith and guilt.
Oh.
And I think that really rubbed off on Kierkegaard. And you can see that tension being worked out in a lot of his writings.
Yeah, and I think, family dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
They always make things more interesting to unpack.
Right.
But it wasn't just his family, was it?
No.
Didn't he have some pretty intense, like, personal experiences that kind of shaped his thinking as well?
Yeah. One of the big ones that's talked about a lot is this broken engagement.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to get into all the,
Gritty.
the gossip.
Yeah.
But I mean, just imagine breaking off a marriage in the 19th century.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine that was not a decision you made lightly back then.
No.
Like, at all.
Yeah.
So how do you think that experience in particular kind of shaped his philosophy?
It's huge. I mean, you think about it, that's like a major turning point in his life when he really had to confront his own values, his beliefs about love, commitment, the expectations of society. It's like a crash course in making choices that define your life.
It's some heavy stuff. And it makes his work all the more relatable.
Right.
It's like he's saying, hey, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've questioned everything. I've wrestled with the big stuff.
He wasn't afraid.
So I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's probably why his work still resonates with people today.
Totally.
Centuries later.
Yeah.
So we have this kind of like rebellious philosopher. He rejected the easy answers, dove headfirst into all the big questions. Now I need to know, what did he actually believe?
Oh, that's the good part.
Yeah. What's the essence of Kierkegaard's philosophy?
Yeah. So this is where it gets really interesting because he had some pretty radical ideas for his time about truth and choice and the meaning of life. So one of the big ideas that Kierkegaard wrestles with is this idea of truth. And he had a very interesting take on it. Okay.
He believed that truth is subjective.
Wait, subjective truth. So you're saying that there's not like one big truth out there that everybody's searching for?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was way ahead of his time in challenging that whole idea of like one universal truth. For Kierkegaard, it was always about the individual.
Okay.
It was about recognizing that truth is deeply personal and something that each of us has to kind of uncover for ourselves.
So it's more about figuring out like what rings true for you based on like your own experiences and your own kind of journey.
Yeah. And he believed that this journey of self-discovery often involves navigating what he called these different stages of life.
Okay, stages of life.
Yeah, he called them stages on life's way.
Stages on life's way. Is this like a choose-your-own-adventure kind of thing?
It is kind of like that. Like, imagine that each of these stages is kind of like a different lens that you can view life through.
Okay.
So the first stage is the aesthetic stage.
Okay.
And this is all about experiencing life through the senses.
Seeking pleasure, novelty, beauty.
So is that like that friend who's always chasing the next thrill, the next music festival, the next like exotic vacation?
Totally.
Okay.
That's them living in that aesthetic stage.
Got it.
But Kierkegaard also, points out that there's a potential pitfall here, which is, you can get so caught up in these fleeting moments that you never really find any deeper meaning.
It's like that whole saying, right? You can't find happiness chasing pleasure or whatever.
Totally. And that's where the ethical stage comes in.
Okay.
So this is where you kind of like graduate from just thinking about your own desires.
Right.
And you start considering duty, responsibility, what's morally right.
So less about what feels good, more about doing the right thing.
Exactly. It's less about me and more about us.
I like it. Okay, so we've gone from seeking pleasure to like living by our moral compass.
Yeah.
Where does the religious stage fit into all of this?
This is where Kierkegaard gets really radical.
Cool.
So the religious stage for him isn't about blindly following dogma or rules.
Right.
It's about taking what he calls a leap of faith.
A leap of faith. That sounds terrifying.
It can be.
Oh.
It's a leap into the unknown.
To the unknown.
It's a leap into something bigger than yourself, even if it defies logic or reason.
So what do you mean by faith? Like, that's a very loaded word, I think, for a lot of people.
Totally.
Yeah.
And for Kierkegaard, it wasn't necessarily about organized religion.
Okay.
It was more about recognizing that there are some things in life that we just can't explain or understand through logic.
So it's about embracing the uncertainty.
Totally.
Taking a chance even when you don't have all the answers.
Exactly. It's about trusting your gut even when it feels scary or irrational.
Okay.
Like this leap of faith could mean pursuing a seemingly impossible dream.
Yeah.
Or like holding on to hope even when everything seems dark and bleak.
Okay. That's actually really powerful.
Yeah.
It takes a certain kind of courage
It does.
to operate that way.
And Kierkegaard would totally agree with you.
Yeah.
He believed that this embrace of the unknown often comes with a little bit of anxiety, but not anxiety in like the traditional sense.
Okay.
He called it this kind of like dizziness of freedom.
Dizziness of freedom. Now you're just messing with me.
No, I'm serious. Think about it. We have all these choices, right?
Yeah.
All this freedom to shape our own lives. That's amazing.
It is.
But it can also be kind of overwhelming.
Totally.
What if we make the wrong choice?
Right.
What if we like mess this up?
This whole life thing.
This one precious life that we have.
Yeah.
That's the dizziness of freedom.
Oh, what
That feeling of infinite possibility coupled with the weight of responsibility.
I like that. I've never thought about it that way, but that totally resonates.
Yeah, and it's true.
Like, it can feel as terrifying as it is liberating to have that much choice.
Exactly. And you know, this is where another one of Kierkegaard's big ideas comes into play. Despair.
Despair. Hold on. I thought this was supposed to be like a crash course, not an existential crisis.
I know. But just hear me out on this one. For Kierkegaard, despair wasn't just about feeling sad.
Mm-hmm.
It was this really profound sense of not being your true self.
So like a misalignment with
Yeah.
your own essence.
Totally. It's like a wake-up call. It's a sign that you're not living authentically.
So it's a good thing.
It can be. It's like a catalyst for change.
Okay.
For growth. For pushing us towards a more meaningful life.
So despair can be a good thing.
Sometimes. It's about confronting those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and
Well.
using them as fuel for self-discovery. You know, it's about asking ourselves those tough questions.
Wait, what?
Like, am I living in a way that aligns with my values? Am I embracing my true self, even if it's messy and complicated?
Okay. This is a lot to unpack. I'm not going to lie.
It's a lot.
Like, this is pretty intense stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to ask, like, why? Why are we even talking about this? Why should we care what some old dead philosopher thought about, like, life and death and everything in between?
That's a great question. And it's one that I think deserves its own deep dive. Because the truth is, Kierkegaard's ideas are more relevant now than ever.
Okay, I think you're going to have to sell me on this one.
Yeah.
Like, how are these ideas, these stages and leaps of faith and all that, how is that relevant to my life today?
You'd be surprised. I mean, think about it. Think about how obsessed we are today with, like, finding your own path, being your authentic self, speaking your truth.
Right.
It's all very Kierkegaard.
So he was like the OG self-help guru, like centuries ahead of his time.
Basically, he just understood this deep human need to, like, define ourselves, you know, to find meaning in a world that can often feel kind of chaotic and overwhelming.
Especially these days. Everything's changing so fast, and it's like, what do I hold on to? You know, what are my anchors?
Yeah, and that's where that whole leap of faith idea comes in. And it's not just about religion, it's about every part of life. Taking a risk on that new job, putting yourself out there when you might get rejected.
Or starting that business you've always dreamed of, even if everyone says it'll never work.
Exactly. It takes guts to take that leap.
And it sounds like Kierkegaard would say, you have to take those leaps.
He'd say that's where the good stuff is, outside that comfort zone.
Wow. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. This guy, living centuries ago, struggling with these really personal questions. And somehow it led to these ideas that are still so relevant today, not just in like philosophy, but everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Psychology, literature, art, even pop culture. His fingerprints are everywhere.
He really tapped into something universal, didn't he?
I think so. And if there's just one thing you take away from this whole deep dive, let it be this. Life isn't about finding all the answers.
Okay, I can get behind that.
It's about leaning into the questions, the maybes, the what ifs, and using all of that to grow and learn and become who you're meant to be.
I love that. So
Yeah.
instead of fearing the unknown, maybe we should just embrace it. Dive in and get a little messy.
Exactly. You might even find some joy in the chaos. I think Kierkegaard would agree with that.
I'm down to try. All right. There you have it, folks. Your crash course in Kierkegaard and the surprisingly relevant world of existentialism. Keep those big questions coming and keep taking those leaps of faith. And hey, if you want to dive into more philosophical deep cuts, you know where to find us.